The Crypto Markets Update is presented by Grayscale, the world's largest digital currency asset manager.
Let's have a live look at Bitcoin. The CoinDesk Bitcoin Price XVX Index currently trading at $43,664. Bitcoin is up about 3% over the past 24 hours. And the CoinDesk Ether Price ETX Index is at 3074. ETH is also charging ahead almost 6% over the past 24 hours. And the new DFX CoinDesk DeFi Index is at 535. DeFi also advancing almost 5% for the day. And joining us now to discuss the crypto markets is Michele Schneider, Managing Director at MarketGauge Group in New Mexico. Hey there, Michele. So we just had Robinhood on, and I know you have some thoughts on Robin. So perhaps you could give us your reaction to their new crypto wallet, as well as, their plans after the scrutiny they received by regulators in DC.
Okay, well, first of all, yes, I think that they definitely deserve credit for some of the things that she said about being pioneers in the commission-free trading and also in really being able to capture a retail investor that before had really been sort of eluded. So I think that that's all good. In terms of Robinhood itself, of course, there were a couple of great questions Lawrence asked about order flow, which I didn't really get a good satisfied answer for, and also regulations that could be coming out of Gensler, which also I didn't get a really good sense of her answer. And of course, up to this point, as she did mention, was that you could actually buy and sell crypto, but you couldn't do anything with them in terms of buying stuff with it. So it was more of a trading application. So that could change. But we seem to feel here that their reputation now is tainted, that the more savvy investors will probably continue using things like Kraken or Coinbase, and that the newer investors, if anything more comes out or any more stuff from Gensler in terms of order flow comes out, forcing Robinhood to make some changes, they'll flee quickly. So that's kind of where we're at right now with Robinhood. We're not using it, but yet it's still the name brand, so to speak, of what people go to who are new investors. And that could change as more options are still available and probably even a little bit more viable because they don't have that tainted reputation, as I say.
So, Michele, switching gears a little bit, it's the Evergrande situation happening right now in China. You know, Bitcoin is traded and cryptocurrencies are traded against stablecoins. The largest of which has a lot of commercial paper on its books, though we don't know exactly where and what. If Evergrande really goes through with defaulting and if there is a contagion in the Chinese commercial paper market, what effect do you think that will have on crypto if the largest stablecoin has most of its assets or a lot of its assets backed by commercial paper?
Well, I did hear your comments on that, and I tend to agree with you that we should have some awareness of the possibility of that being very negative. And I think the biggest proof we had is that whereas people thought of crypto going opposite of the market as some kind of a hedge, we saw on Monday when the market really crashed, and then the follow through on Tuesday with the Evergrande story and other problems, that crypto went down in tandem with the market, which shows that it's also still considered to be a speculative asset. And getting back to Evergrande, I think there's a real chance that it's going to create more havoc. And my biggest evidence of that, besides the fact that we know that President Xi has his agenda of really trying to flatten the playing field between the very wealthy and eradicating poverty in his country, he's already proven that he doesn't really seem to care so much about the profitability of these companies insofar as you look at Alibaba, which crashed after he came down on monopolies. You look at a company like Electric Arts, which has crashed after video gaming. And then, of course, with the casinos, you had a big crash in Wynn and LVS and a couple of the casino stocks. So that to me logically means that unless President Xi gets on board with some kind of restructure for Evergrande, we will see that spillover. And I do think that it not only will affect the markets, it'll affect commodities and definitely will affect crypto as well.
Michele, I just want to touch on this correlation issue, which you and I discussed a little bit. So, as we saw earlier this week, what you said appears to be absolutely right. We saw Bitcoin really moving in tandem with the stock market. It's not the first time. We saw it in 2020, with the pandemic, huge crash, Bitcoin in the market, stock market kind of crashed together. But if you actually pull the and I'm sure you've done this, if you pull the S&P 500 data and you actually look at the correlations, like S&P 500 Bitcoin, they're actually pretty low. So I guess the question is how much of an outlier is this? I mean, what is the narrative here? Because if you look at it holistically, they don't actually move together that often, right? So I'm just curious, what your narrative is here.
Well, that could be changing. That's exactly, Emily, what you and I talked about, was that you're right. Classically, it was almost like you'd run to Coinbase products and coins for some kind of a safety. But there's also a lot of exposure to a lot of companies that are stock related that don't necessarily have exposure to the coin itself, but are related through mining, et cetera. And those also could have a different relationship. So I think these relationships are still really working themselves out. But the latest one is that crypto does seem to be working with the S&P 500. Whether or not that sustains, I can't really say, except for the fact that I do really feel very bullish in terms of cryptocurrencies longer term. And also what's interesting is we're really measuring it here on Bitcoin, even though all coins crashed that day. But these emerging coins like the mayor talking about Miami coin and some of the other coins that keep coming up that could wind up going counter. So the whole space it's really very interesting to try to sit there and sort out, should I be buying Bitcoin? Should I be buying Cardano? Should I be buying XRP still? Because there's that whole thing. And right now, though, I think we have to be somewhat cautious in terms of what happens with the market, what happens with Evergrande, and what happens with cryptocurrency.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned caution, but the markets are certainly bouncing back up, and especially after Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell's remarks the other day, saying that the Fed is going to keep rates unchanged, but there will be up to 7 hikes by the end of 2024. I wonder, do you believe that the reaction in the markets has validated this kind of optimism?
Well, it's a double-edged sword. When the Fed actually starts to talk about taper, if they're doing it as slowly as they're planning to do, which they're saying by the mid-2022, they'll have been reducing month by month $10 billion worth of bond buying, and then starting to look at the actual rates themselves. But there was a lot of ifs, ands, and buts yesterday with Powell's discussion. He said, if the labor market is good, then he will do these things. If it's not, then of course he'll keep accommodative. He said inflation has met its target, which is one reason why he's looking now at the real possibility of taper. And then he also said, but if the whole government defaults, there's nothing the Federal Reserve can do about it. So right now the market is sinking its teeth into the fact that, well, we had jobless claims a little bit up higher than expected today. So bad news is good news. Okay, the Fed's not going to do anything. And I think that's where we're at. But there's so much going on out there. Besides Evergrande, we still have this debt ceiling situation, which has become more of a politically charged situation, but it could also really be an impact to the market, particularly if the government shuts down. So I think if you're looking to buy at these levels, we're very heavy in cash. I think you just have to really watch a couple of things. You have to watch junk bonds because that's been the ultimate risk on. They're still doing great. You have to watch the Russell 2000 and the transportation sector because that's really going to reflect the economy. And I think you also have to watch the treasury bonds, the long bonds, the TLTs, because those are considered more flight to safety. And so far, they're holding up. So there's a very mixed picture here. I think you have to have some pretty flexible trading parameters right now. And let's see if this rally sustains today.